that the gospel of Jesus Christ is being violently trampled in pulpits all across America. It is being spat on in biblical counseling sessions, and it is being mocked in contemporary worship music, song after song. And more than that, those who have been entrusted with the task of shepherding souls, that is, pastors like myself, they have denigrated the grace of God in Jesus Christ and watered it down or nuanced it to the point of irrelevance that there are, as Leonard Ravenhill has said, countless individuals being thrust into a Christless eternity and are at orbit forever in the regions of the damned. In other words, there are many evangelicals going to hell when they die. And it's not because they heard the gospel message and found it wanting. It's not because they didn't like it. It's because they neglect the things of God. They neglect the cost and the call of the gospel. And if this is true, then it is not enough for me to sit here week in and week out and preach to you a message that does not make explicit the gospel, does not make explicit that which Jesus calls us to, and doesn't make explicit who God is and what he's about. And so for the next 9 weeks or so, we are going to be in a series I am calling the Abrasive Gospel. And the reason I have entitled it the Abrasive Gospel, is because it is going to rub us, if we're leaning in, if we're listening correctly, in a way that will be uncomfortable. It is going to chisel us and mold us and cause us to see God differently and see the gospel for what it truly is. We do not need a social gospel. We do not need a prosperity gospel. We don't need an easy gospel. And friends, we don't even need a helpful gospel. We need a beautifully robust, God-glorifying, Holy Spirit-honoring, Jesus-treasuring and exalting, Lordship-embracing, cost and cross-cherishing, abrasive, yet life-giving gospel. Life-giving gospel. So the end and the aim of this series is to make explicit that which God has done for us through his Son, for his glory, and to our benefit. But in order to get there, we're going to have to travel down a road that is going to, no doubt, sting. But if we don't understand the bad news, we can't understand the good news. And if we don't understand God, then we won't understand his workings. So, the gospel, in all of its splendor, all of its majesty, all of its beauty, and all of its loving kindness, endures as a violently abrasive reality as well. It has to be. By its very design, it stands starkly opposed to our innate sinfulness and our carnality, our delusions of self-sufficiency, and ultimately our desire to be and act as God. And so by way of introduction, I want this sermon here to be about this reality. The gospel starts with God. It doesn't start with man, and it doesn't start with man's sin. It starts with the God of the Bible and all of his splendor and all of his majesty and all of his beauty. It starts with him. God is the foundation of the gospel. He is the reason we need the gospel, and he is the one who orchestrated, accomplished, and accomplishes the gospel. The one who creates a people for himself through the preaching of the gospel. And as John Piper has famously said, is the gospel. So if we want to get the gospel right, as I have said, we have to get God right. So who is God? What is he about? Well, first and foremost, God is paramount. God is completely and gloriously holy and righteous. He is the only source of good, and he is the only one who does good. He is transcendent. He is set apart from creation, both in his powerful might and his moral excellence. He loves and executes justice. He is supremely beautiful, and he is garbed in purity. There is no God besides him, and he cannot dwell with, approve of, or ultimately allow sin. He utterly abhors it and all those who revel in it, as Psalm 5 and Psalm 7 make plain. In other words, he is completely other and supremely good.